Good afternoon and welcome to Art of the Lens. I'm very excited to hear from these two today about their passion and their techniques and their why they do what they do. So I'm Susan. For those of you who don't know me, along with my husband Jake, we are the coordinators of the show. I don't know what to call us ever, but we wrangle this thing with a lot of good help from a lot of awesome people. And we're so happy that you're here today. So today I'm going to introduce, sitting right next to me on your left, stage left, is Michael Paul, photographer, Art of the West. And on stage right here is McQuarrie. And they both happen to be local, at least part of the year. I know you spend about half the year up in the beautiful Montana, Wyoming area, and you travel a lot. So we're going to hear some of that in our stories, but I really like to start our talks by having each of you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, like where you're from, and number one reason why you fell in love with photography.
Good lead-in. Michael Paul, as I was introduced, been a Phoenix area resident since 2009. Grew up in a pretty small town in Wisconsin, in a family that didn't do much traveling, and until I was about 25, most of my footsteps fit into a couple county area. And by the time I broke out of that, everything that I was seeing, particularly in the West, was really had gripped me. And the novelty of that now 20 years later is still strong. So that fuels my creative drive. Photography, seeing beautiful things is one thing, things that move you, and I know you've all experienced that. Capturing it with a camera is another. Very often I would see things that would inspire certain feelings in me. Going back and looking at the photographs would always leave me feeling pretty flat, and so I took my artistic itches that I always have and I pointed it towards solving the riddle of how can I make an image make me feel the way I feel looking at it as when I initially saw it. So that's kind of what got me into my photographic journey. My mom was also an artist young in life, and my dad was a lithographer, so the crossroads of all of that landed me here, talking to these fine people.
And we're glad you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
And by the way, both of these gentlemen, this is their first year, and I created this talk and called them or emailed them and said, hey, you'll do this, right? And they said yes. So great, let's hear a little bit about you.
Testing. Okay, good. Chemical engineer, very technical. Worked at Monsanto, R&D, commercialization, production. A lot of statistics, a lot of math, a lot of data. But when I was a kid, my parents had a lot of art around. Like they had a mosaic table and a sculpture that was all metalled. And I'd love to touch it and feel it and look at it and stare at it. And then I discovered when I got older, there were these books by Robinson Crusoe, not by Robinson Crusoe, but the books, illustrated by N.C. Wyeth. And I would just stare at these illustrations. They're not, even today they're beautiful, they're not oversaturated, but they look so beautiful and they just sort of draw you in. And then finally, my dad, for whatever reason, thought movies and watching TV was bad. But I got to see my first movie in this wide screen, which was 2001. And all these beautiful red colors. I felt like I was inside. And then these John Ford movies with these big scenes, the few that he had in color, like The Searchers, going through Monument Valley. I just felt like I was inside of it. I forgot everything. And when I would sort of go in and out of my photography, I was a horrible photographer when I got my first camera at 20. My mom gave it to me. I'm saying, oh, wow, this is really bad when I came back. But I still shot with it. It was fun to use the camera. I'd turn the dials and see what would happen. Everything would be out of focus. I didn't care. It looked kind of abstract. But then, many decades later, after taking 10 million shots, I started to get good. And I thought, this engineering stuff is driving me crazy. I'm tired of the politics and all the arguing. I think I'm just going to focus in on photography. And that happened when I visited this place 2 years ago. And I bought some pieces by someone here, over there, stared at it. He was using Cibachrome. I knew Ciba-Geigy and all that. And I thought, I don't think I'm good enough, but maybe I'll just devote myself. So I just buried myself and went on these trips and bought 8 cameras and played around with each sensor size. And I think I've achieved what I wanted, at least close to it, because when I look at these images, I don't believe that I took them, to be honest with you. But it has that feeling of being inside. And that's why I call it cinematic. To me, that's cinematic, when you feel like you're drawn in. And I call it stillness, because I find when I stare at art, especially when I was a kid, no matter what was going on around me, it caused me to be meditative. It wasn't necessarily answering any question. It was just my mind sort of floating as it stared at the image and just letting the mind sort of meditate. It's more like meditation. So that's why I call it cinematic. I feel like I'm a cinematic art photographer, and sort of my style is cinematic stillness. And we'll get into why these things look the way they are later.
I love that. Thank you. By the way, the Western Spirit Museum in Scottsdale has a series of great old westerns that they show. Like every month or so, there's a new one. And catch that sometime. But plus, they have an amazing poster display of movie posters upstairs at the museum, Western Spirit. So, okay, so I love that you're this cinematic, and I think that you really explained that very well, and you can expand on that. And when I saw your work, it's just like, it hits my soul, because it's like all my favorite places to go. And you really are focused on the American West. Tell us why.
Well, I'm glad I told my background story, because growing up in the cul-de-sac in the rural area of Wisconsin, my dad was hopelessly in love with the American West. He was born in '48. His dad, Pearl Harbor survivor, had also loved the American West. So I'm third generation that's kind of dealing with this illness. And but 6 channels and a VCR, we watched every single Western series and movie, always talking about Western history. These things were really bred into me, but as an adult, you kind of find your own way. And after a few years in my middle 20s, I really gravitated back to all of that. And there was something about the story of the West that really had gripped me, also being into history. And so my fascination to depict it in a way that matches my own romantic view of it kind of became the quest. Aside from taking a few initial pictures and seeing places you've never seen, to see them and convey them in a way that spoke to how it appeared to me in my imagination, but in reality, it kind of became the quest. Hopefully that answers.
Yeah. So where was your first destination that you went with your camera?
Yeah. So I had actually moved out east a few times before I came west. The first time I came west was to Arizona. Oh, thanks. Sorry. And so from Wisconsin, I'm thinking the Southwest is all warm. I drove over the Continental Divide in New Mexico through a blizzard in October. And I was wearing shorts thinking I was, getting ahead of the curve here. So it was a learning curve from the word go, but my head was on the swivel the whole time. It made such an impact. And it's part of the reason I never left, aside from my stints in other parts of the West.
I remember driving down the Mogollon Rim and seeing a tarantula crossing the road. I was like, oh my God, I don't like Arizona. I got over it. Yeah. So did you're more, when I see your work, I'm seeing more north, not necessarily Monument Valley and things like that, but Yellowstone and Tetons and... Yeah.
So geographically, I've been basically shooting the series that I put out, Romance of the American West. I've been doing it for 10 years. It's a pretty large body of work. And what most people will see if they come by my booth is a very hard culling process of what to actually show you, trying to vary up some of the subject matters and compositions, and changing all the geographic locations or representing all of them became a little bit too tough to juggle. But the work really encompasses anything west of the Mississippi, from the Canadian border to the Mexican border. Any place that epitomizes what I see the American West being became a subject, and that included wildlife, really unspoiled vignettes of the West that really help communicate the spirit of the Western interior to the viewer is really the undertone of every photograph in the series.
And I get the feeling that you sort of feel like it's your calling to capture these moments and images and to share them.
Yeah, it might sound a little cheesy, but you spend so much time out there and you get really comfortable with it. And, you know, you kind of return to civilization after sometimes being out for several months. And in a digital form, you have little snippets of the West's soul in your camera. And in putting them out in a physical form, in a photograph, you're allowing people to become slightly acquainted with that in the same way you did. So if somebody comes up to my booth and they say that they're moved by it, I feel like my job is done, because that's how I felt when I took it, and if it conveys that to you, it's, to me, a successful photograph.
That's awesome. Okay, have any of you seen those like funny videos on Facebook or somewhere of nature photography where you're laying there on the ground and then an animal jumps on you? Or have you ever had, any animal ever try to steal your lens or anything?
No, I haven't. I will tell one story, and this is, you know, safety is a big part of being out there, especially when you're shooting unpredictable wild animals. But understanding their behavior is just as much a mechanism to try to get the best photographs as it is to stay safe yourself. And sometimes you have to push the boundaries a little bit, and I think for anybody who deals with anything enough, a danger enough, you get maybe a little complacent sometimes or a little comfortable. So the story, in brief, is I was shooting some of these young bull elk in Wyoming, and this is kind of rut season, and they're all trying to prove their mettle, and they're kind of locking antlers, and it's a really neat thing because sometimes clusters of 3 or 4 or 5 will all do this, and when you get that many doing it, it doesn't really make that great a photograph because you get a lot of moose butts in your face, but it's a spectacle, and it's really neat. Well, they were doing this, and I was a pretty safe distance away, and one of them got spooked, and he just jumped out of the scrum and took off, and it happened to be right in my direction. And so you see how fast they cover ground, and your first thought is, I've got roughly 2.8 seconds to get out of here if he continues. He saw him. What was worse about it is there was a safari tour that was about 150 yards away up on the ridge, and I heard everyone gasp. And so in that 2.8 seconds, I was thinking, God, I hope I make it, and God, I hope I don't make it on YouTube. I lived to tell the tale, and I actually got a few good pictures out of that. So.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. Yes, don't pet the fluffy cows, and stay out of the way from the elks. So your bison piece on your front wall is, I don't know, how many of you have seen each of their studios so far? That bison piece is like, he's looking right at you, and I know one of your collectors, he said something about it. He's looked at many, many bison photos, but never saw one like that.
Yeah, so there's something really powerful about when you're, what I mentioned earlier, you have these experiences, you're seeing these things, and you're trying to convey the sense that you had in those images to someone who's looking at it. And one of the more powerful situations I've ever run into is when you're having encounters with wildlife, safe encounters, and you're isolated, there's not a lot of people around, it's just you and them, and they see you, and you lock eyes, and you can see them thinking, and there's something, you know, you don't speak the same language, but almost in that moment you do a little bit, to sound, you know, cheesy about that, but, so anyway, I think that lends itself well to photography, you know, presenting a photograph where the camera is locking eyes puts, obviously, the viewer in that position. And that seems to have a pretty big impact. The buffalo photograph, which I titled The Alpha, as he certainly was in his herd. He's not locking eyes with the camera, but bison tend to have kind of strange eyes. The whites of their eyes and the darks of their eyes they don't photograph well because they always kind of look like they're got a wandering eye, and it kind of, you know, they're never like focusing on something, whether you or something in the distance, but this particular photograph, the way that the catch lights fell in its eyes, it looked focused, and the gentleman had mentioned he'd been looking for a bison photograph for a long time, wanted something that had kind of a clear kind of resonance in his eyes, and check the box there.
Yeah, because their eyes are kind of on the side of their head. How many of you have had a close encounter with the bison buffalo? Anyone?
Ooh, over there.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like, we were driving through Yellowstone and there's one right on the side of the road. And Jake kind of slowed down. I'm like, we're going, because I didn't want him to get up. And then right down the middle of the road, another one comes walking toward our car. You can't like really do anything, but you certainly don't want to get out of your car and pet them. But very exciting. So I'm sure there's going to be some more stories that I'll get out of you. But Gray, one of the things that I felt with your portfolio that you said was you show us the world and you focus in on architectural details, whether it's nature or handmade. And I'm fascinated by the bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, and the architecture and engineering behind it. Talk about that, please.
You know me too well. I don't know how that's possible. But that's exactly right. So all those studies of thermodynamics and all that kind of stuff, it kind of rewired my brain over the years. And the problem solving I had to do, you had to get into the details, the little smallest things. And the way that translates into my photography and the things that I'm fascinated with when I'm looking through the lens is there a detail that's hidden there that's really special, that is intriguing to me? So since you brought up the bridge, might as well talk about the bridge. I love the Manhattan Bridge. So some people say, is that the Brooklyn Bridge? No, this is the Manhattan Bridge. Once the Brooklyn Bridge was built, there was too much traffic. They had to build another bridge. So it was designed about 1890 something and was constructed in 1909. And so what I think about is all the draftsmen that drew every single little part, every little brace. And they had to figure out how they were going to combine all this steel that came from Pittsburgh probably, and then how they're going to rivet all together. And it's all riveted by hand. And then they went through all of the trouble. See all this little ornamentation here, 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 and here? This could have been a square. I don't think there's any engineering reason why they made rounded corners. I don't know if you guys remember the little battle that Steve Jobs had with his engineers. He said, I wanted rounded corners. When you look at the windows, I want to see rounded corners. And then he just pointed out all the signs and other things. And then that's what they did here too. And then another fun little detail as you look at these little things is you see the numbers on the trusses. So some engineer, inspector, whatever, 36, 37, 38, 39. And then it picks up like at 47. And I had Tina make a painting of the Manhattan Bridge. She said she would never take a commission from me again, I guess, because of all that. And then just goes on to 60 and so on and so forth. And I have several angles of this bridge, and you can see what the effect is when I use a wide angle really close, when I use a wide angle really far away, when I use a medium lens this way and that way. So you can see how you can get a whole different feel just depending on the orientation. But I love the bridge so much, and it means so much to me, especially thinking about the people that designed it and built it and then used it over the, almost 100 years or more. I guess it's more than 100 years. I had a poet, a New York poet, write me a poem. She's a street poet. And I was so touched by what she was doing. She calls herself Supergirl Reject. So she's like an Asian American, and her father said you would never make any money doing poetry. And she made like $1,200 her first day, and now she goes to Paris and stuff. So I wrote her an email, and I said, "Could you write me a poem about the Manhattan Bridge?" And she did. Can I read it?
Oh, please.
Okay. Now, I may cry. I can't help it. I get emotional with these sorts of things, especially poetry. I can't write poetry at all. But at dusk, the bridge hums, not with cars, but with ghosts of hands. Their fingerprints still warm in the iron bones. Now, when someone comes to my booth, I insist, and sometimes they don't do it, touch it. Please touch my art. Feel the texture. When I studied old photographers, when I studied old photographers and I went to little showings of people's collections of really old photography turned at the century, I was blown away by the texture of the paper. And that sort of reminds me of as a kid when I could touch the art. seeing things is one thing, being able to touch it is the other. If you looked at the map of the nervous system, of where all your nerves go, it's your hands and it's your eyes. Anyways, sorry to interrupt this beautiful poem. Steel ribs hold the weight of a century's breath, each rivet a prayer to permanence. I walk through the draftsman. I walk where the draftsman dreamed, where men in wool caps. This one, I don't know what affects me. Hammered faith into form, and they built it beautiful, even where no one would see. I don't know why, but that just gets to me. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Beautiful.
The city burns in blue and amber, 1,000 lamps rehearsing eternity, paint half fresh, half faded, the way memory always is. Beneath me, the river keeps time, carrying whispers of their laughter, their stubborn hope. Whoa. That something made by human hands might outlast human sorrow. And I feel them still. Thank you for laughing. It's keeping me going. Those unseen architects of wonder, reminding me softly through the pulse of metal and night air, create as if it will last forever. And then at the end of it, she says, "For Gray." The poem was typed on a 1969 typewriter in New York City. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Oh my, sweet girl. What?
You can look her up.
Supergirl.
Yeah, you can
reject.
look her up.
We gotta look her up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ask him another. I don't want to follow that.
Keep going. Move over a little bit.
Oh my God, this is an art form. It's beautiful, and I know those typewriters where your fingers would get stuck in between the Smith Corona. Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And
Thank you for laughing. Keep going.
and it does capture the art form that you captured in your art form.
Yes.
And it's a true way to honor all those that built that. Wow. Wow. Okay. Are you good? Are you good?
I'm good. Taking a little mental break. Good. I can still get through, I think.
Should we talk more, or should I step away?
Sure. I'll just say, I'll talk a little bit about this wide angle one, because I'm sure people are curious. And this gets back to the cinematic aspect. So this is called Canesville Mesa. It's a table mesa. Some people think it's like the Grand Canyon. It was made a little bit differently. When the sediment compacted itself, some was more solid than others, and when the erosion process hit, this stuff remains and the other stuff starts to crumble. So you sort of have something that's of permanence and then something crumbling. And so it reminds me of the bridge. That bridge is under so much force and stuff, they're trying to keep that thing up. Same thing here. Nature is trying to keep this table mesa up. Now, when I edit, Ansel Adams, he didn't just take the stuff out of the camera. That's not true. But as some of you may know, he did a lot of burning and dodging. So what he did is he sort of looked at the midtones, he looked at the dark tones, he looked at the bright tones. In fact, there's a system, it's like the 7 layers of tones, and he would either bring them up or bring them down. And so that's what I did with this photograph. It was taken essentially in the dark. But if you've ever walked around in the moonlight, the light's all over the place. And so when the sun is this far down, you're a little bit past blue hour, you get this sort of glowy, sunny look to everything. So what I did was, near the final step, is I used a luminosity mask to select all these bright highlights. And then using a very delicate brush with my tablet, I just painted it in very subtly over the whole thing where the luminosity mask was. So that made these little bright areas brighter and more intriguing. It sort of added sort of a micro contrast. Then I took the dark area, selected that, created another luminosity mask. I used sort of a dark blue, and then I painted across there. So when people look at this, they say, gosh, that looks like a painting. And thank you very much. But you can see all this if you come up to it. Don't use your fingernails, but you can touch it. You can see all this beautiful detail. And if anyone uses Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever, this is without the clarity. This is without the sharpness. This was painted in. And I think that's one of the reasons why it looks like a painting. That and also the time of day that I used or the time of the evening. And I think it draws me in. It looks like a monster coming out. And so that's why I call it cinematic. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so you got into some of the post. I'll let you have that. I think that's fascinating. So for a photographer, you get the experience of actually going out and shooting it, and then you go back to the studio and create the magic. And tell us what you do, and like, are any of these multiple shots?
Michael, I love your stuff, okay?
He wrote that on Instagram this morning.
I'll write you a poem next time.
No, don't do that.
I'll bring some tissues. So I'm sorry.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your production?
Oh, yeah. I mean, my style is tends to be more. Thank you. Yeah. My style tends to be more as you saw it, and so a lot of the editing that I tend to do, or the captures in the field, are with the idea that I'm going to turn them into something that reflects what you had seen. The goal being trying to transmit the soul and spirit of the Western interior to the viewer has a lot to do with not really interfering or putting my own voice in that. And that's not to say the photographs aren't unedited, because a lot of times to achieve that look, you have to do quite a bit to it, particularly when you shoot shots that are into the sun, where you have a great exposure contrast between the light source and your subject. And so sometimes that requires taking multiple exposures and kind of mapping them over using luminosity masks. And sometimes it can get pretty aggressive in that it can almost sometimes be too difficult. You have to scrap what you have and either go back and try to reshoot it, or hope for different lighting conditions and try to work with it. But most of what I have is, Light Hunter came over by my booth, and one of the nicest compliments I had gotten, he asked me, is this film, or do you shoot in film? And I thought just the pure question of that was good, because if you can't tell if it is or not, then I guess I'm probably doing a few things right. And I kind of humorously likened it to digital photography, to maybe like a teenager who got their first bottle of cologne, where they're just dousing themselves in it. And I feel like editing is more something you're just trying to kind of push it a little bit in one direction or another. Maybe you enhance the mood a little bit, but you're doing it with the purpose of trying to convey what was there, and again, how you felt in the moment to the person who's viewing it. So a lot of the editing decisions kind of fall in line with that.
Okay, very good. Do you have a favorite time of day that you like to shoot?
Yeah, bookends for sure. Sunrise, sunset. But you can get a lot of weather systems offer a lot of really good variety. It can add a lot of mood. It can add drama. It can change your lighting patterns. If you have storm clouds that let sun peek through, you can get, it's to say, like, if I was to write a book and recommend when people would go out and get the best landscape photographs, I would say early or late. But like any good rule in photography, sometimes the best images you can get are by completely breaking those rules. And sometimes I've had some of my best shots at noon, which I would never instruct someone to go out at noon chasing good photographs. But so bookends of the day, but if you have conditions, that offer opportunities, they're out there for sure.
So the black and white of the moose, is that a moon?
Yes.
Is that early morning with the moon still setting?
Yeah, so one day a month you have the moon setting at sunset, and it's one of the few times in the month where
Sunrise.
It's sunrise, yes, I'm sorry. And it's one of the few times of the month where you can actually get a proper exposure of the moon without having to do kind of some funny things, because the ambient light in the sky will match the exposure of the moon. In this case, it's along the Grovant River in northwest Wyoming, a really, really beautiful, naturally running river that carves through these beautiful groves of cottonwoods, and a lot of moose activity down there, and I've tracked them for a number of years. And there's so many opportunities just to get the moose walking through the trees with rays of light hitting them. You can get beautiful scenes, and in this case, in early rut season, you have a little bit of a story unfolding. You've got, I titled the piece Romance in the Cottonwoods, hopefully suggesting a little bit about the story that's going on there. And what interesting story behind that is when I took that, this area is pretty well known for moose, so if you go out there, you're probably going to be chasing around with a few people who have real big lenses. I have some myself, but I usually carry a couple, not just something for real long and personal, but also for these environmental scenes. And so I'm standing pretty close to a couple photographers, 2 or 3 of them, and they've got long lenses and they're all focusing on what's going on with the 2 moose. And as I'm standing there, I'm kind of looking up and looking at them, realizing they don't see it. And mainly because they're shooting real long, they're not looking for that. So it was a really neat lesson, one, to be well equipped for what you plan for, but also maybe what comes unplanned. And then taking advantage of an opportunity. I couldn't have planned that; it just happened. And sometimes the best shots, despite all the planning that you can do, sometimes the best shots are just momentary opportunities that maybe just like life too.
Yeah, and it sounds like don't only look through the lens. Be sure to put the lens down and look around to see the full picture sometimes.
Yeah, that's a fair statement. I think sometimes looking through the lens can kind of help you frame something up intentionally. But yeah, keeping your head on a swivel, and you almost, you might agree with this, but when you start working with certain focal lengths and you look around, you're seeing your whole normal field of view, but you're seeing little snippets in different sizes, and you're almost seeing pictures like around you. You might see 30 pictures sometimes, and it's just kind of going into auto mode, picking your lens and using the camera as kind of an extension, the same way you would your hand after a while.
And do you do like panorama shots, or do you ever do like stitching together of different images?
Yeah, I'll definitely do that, and to great effect, like you're seeing here. It sometimes even comes in handy because if you're packing in somewhere, you can't possibly take everything you have without suffering. So sometimes you actually have equipment limitations, and if you have a scene that's bigger than what you anticipated through your equipment choices, sometimes that stitching is just a mechanism to get a wider shot that you would otherwise be limited on.
Thank you. That's good. And was this one multiple images?
I admit, yes.
Yeah.
7 images.
Okay.
100 megapixels each.
Ooh.
It's like a 10, 11 gigabyte, whatever, big file. I think I need that drink now.
Okay, so, wow, how do you store all that? Do you have
Okay, that's a serious issue that I had to deal with. I just tell you really briefly, it's like I had to become an IT guy, okay? First of all, RAID, no, not for me. But I have a 32 gigabyte enclosure of 8 terabyte SSD cards, no spinning disks, it'll drive me nuts. One of those is dedicated to just my RAWs, never touch it, just load it in from the camera. Then I pull out my working RAWs from culling the data. And then from that, I do the editing. That goes on another. And then the finished photos go on another. And with the finished photos, I have to have them in different phases, like the Photoshop file, the print master file, the print master for this specific paper of this particular size, and so on and so forth. So it's not unusual that I'll have 5 or 6 pictures, but the Photoshop and the original RAWs are pretty big. And then I back up either to the cloud or to another disk, which I keep in a safety deposit box. But if something does go bad, I have a recovery plan. One of the issues with a RAID is, oops, who's going to recover the mess? Because it's all interwoven, and I'm an engineer, I'm a control freak, so I had to engineer it myself.
Fascinating. I love that. One of my biggest challenges is managing all the images that we get and storing them. And I love when I get good images. Sometimes I get things from artists. I'm like, well, I can't use that in anything. It's 72 DPI. What were they thinking? They need training.
You'll never get a bad image from me.
I know.
In terms of megapixels.
I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean that's pretty amazing because that's a lot of storage.
It's a lot of storage, but it took a long time to set it all up, and it's expensive. But now that I have it, it's made my life simpler. I can sleep at night. Because, like, you're in a show and you can't find a file or something, or somebody makes an order and you can't get the, oh no. So I never want to go through that nightmare scenario. That sounds like you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Same?
Well, yeah, file management is part of the, it's part of the gig. If you can take all the amazing photographs in the world, but if you can't access them, it's, it's like, and you don't want to waste time fighting that. Like, you're out there to create and to share, you don't want to be wasting time looking for the missing sock,
So I'm guessing you each have very precise naming rules that you follow? Yes?
Oh yeah, that's the first thing you do when you import the images. You had to establish a nomenclature. So whether you're using Bridge or Lightroom or whatever, the first thing I do is rename all the files, a batch rename. And then that's even better than keywords. And that helps to make my life simpler. When I didn't do that, what a nightmare. I can't search for the picture because I don't know what the name is because it's some weird number and I may have 5 of those. And naming convention. I learned this from a professional street photographer, Phil Penman. The first edit session that I had was about how to store your pictures and how to name them. And he was been doing all of his life in the newspapers and all of that. His stuff is all over the world. But yeah, that was like really, really important. I said, I better take this seriously. So yeah, naming is important.
Excellent advice. Did you want to add to that? Or?
No.
Yeah, regardless of the nuts and the bolts of how you organize, I think just being organized in a way that makes sense to you. I've known people to be some of the messiest people ever, but they know where everything is. And it's organized in their head in some way. And my system's a little different, but, if we had a fast draw competition, maybe we'd get the files in the same time. I don't know.
You're still young.
So, we were doing some fun little quick ask questions, and one of the questions was, is your studio tidy and neat or messy?
Okay, I've never known an R&D lab that I've been in the biggest and smallest companies and single inventors to be neat and orderly. That's a bad sign. It's a mess in my house in one whole wing of it. It's just a mess. But certain things are precisely organized. But I got paper laying around and the printer and the ink cartridges and the lenses, and it's not pretty.
Good to know that if it's an organized looking lab, we should stay away. Okay. And tidy? Or
yeah, I'm pretty tidy. My kind of life's theory is built around simplicity and introducing a lot of complications. Not to get into a psychological talk, but when I have things where I know where they are, I feel more set. I feel more calm. I feel more confident, and it goes in hand. And I've had it where I kind of grew up a little on the messier side, and you suffer the consequences of that. And I guess I learned early enough to, especially when you're dealing with high volume photography, if you go a little sideways with that, it can get ugly really quick. And to recover 10 years down the road is impossible. And your brain's almost kind of wired to where those things used to be. It's kind of like if you move, and you put all your stuff in a different spot, and then it used to be next to that, now it's not. And so, organized.
I think that's good. And also with your traveling, both of you, you've got to be organized with your equipment. And do you always carry your cameras on with you, or do you drive when you go?
I've mentioned a few people who have come in. I travel about 35,000 miles a year, and there's a certain level of discomfort that comes with that. You don't have the comforts of home. But when it comes to equipment and that, I pretty much have it on me all the time. Because most of the places that I plan to go, even if I pick a spot that's 500 miles away, I'm trying to route myself in a place that's going to be useful. And there have been times where I'll pass something or something will happen and it's a momentary thing. If you don't have the camera ready, you kind of miss out on it. And that's the whole point of being there. So it's always out, it's always ready, always full tank of gas in it. And yeah, that's kind of pretty much how I travel. It's my ride shotgun.
I love that. And do you go different places every time you in those 35,000 miles a year?
Yeah, well, I would parallel this with most any other artist who maybe they latch onto a subject. They're going to revisit it, refine it, make different variations. And I do the same thing when I get to know a place. It's almost like getting to know a person a little bit. You get into the folds of their personality. And it kind of draws you in a little bit, leads you into, I want to know a little bit more. I want to ask certain questions. And it's the same thing when I go to a place. Very infrequently will I have creative spasms all the time. I go to a place and instantly I'm thinking of shots that I could get or places I could go or in certain conditions how it will look. And once you start that process, you can't help but go back. And so sometimes over several years, my locations get a little patterned because you're still kind of working with it. It's still a malleable piece of clay that hasn't hardened yet. And so it's only natural to kind of, seek those creative visions out. But the list of places, I'll go to a location with the idea, I'm going to go to this spot with this shot in mind and under these conditions. And in the process of going there, I'll discover maybe a half a dozen other things that I want to shoot. And so the idea is to go there and check one shot off my box, or check one box off the shot list. And what ends up happening is I leave with, a half a dozen others that I need to get. And so it's really a snowball. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place, or is that like asking if somebody has a favorite child?
Yeah, that's tough. I would say not necessarily a singular place. As it is a certain set of conditions and places that are not overrun. I don't really like shooting cliche things. There's a lot of photography hotspots, but I'm not really interested in being a cover band. So I think if you're creative enough, there's a million compositions and things that no one has ever seen before. One of the nice compliments I can get is someone who says, "Where is that?" I don't want to have a wall of places that people automatically know where they are. So that's kind of part of my creative process is to seek out those places. And so to answer your question, my favorite place is a place that is generally maybe undiscovered or untapped in its photographic potential and away from people. And I don't hate people. But when you're engaging in a creative process, having other people there can kind of pull you out of that. And I feel like you can't get as much out of yourself or what you're shooting if you have those distractions. So my favorite place would be a place where all of those criteria are met.
He loves people, but not when you're, yes. That makes sense, though. And I love the discovering the unknown or the undiscovered. You wander off the trail a little bit then, probably.
I do. You can't help yourself.
Yeah.
You're always like, well, what's around the bend? Or, I mean, there could be something amazing. And I've had it happen, too, where you'll go shoot someplace and then you'll kind of look into it when you get back and you're like, oh, if I just would have gone a little further, there would have been this whole, pocket of opportunities. And yeah, it's really alluring. But you also have safety, I do this all myself, so you can only go so far. And, I have a mom, she gets nervous, so.
Yes. Stay safe, always. What about you? I mean, in your travels, do you have...
Yeah, so let's talk about me breaking my back. Carrying a lot of equipment is very exhausting, but when I go on the plane, like to Iceland, I'm going back again this year, Leonardo says, bring everything, Gray. And I'm not going to check anything in. So I have a means of maxing 2 bags that I can sneak through on first class. But it's heavy. It's really, really heavy. And then in terms of favorite places, I like people too. But I like the city, but I don't necessarily shoot people in the city unless it's something I'm really looking at, like a guitar player or ballerinas that are about ready to go off somewhere and I catch them on the street. So I like the street photography. So like New York, I'm addicted to New York. I love Iceland. I want to go to New Zealand for the same reason. I love Utah, the Badlands of Utah. I want to go to New Mexico. So I am always sort of looking for like building structure, landscape, which is like building structure, and then people in interesting positions that look like there's a story there, and bridges, of course. So I think that's pretty good.
And have you ever had a close encounter with a dangerous something?
Okay, New York, Sunday morning, my Fujifilm broke the strap. So I had to have it wrapped around me. I engineered a way that I could still use the strap. It was actually more secure. I'm thinking no one's going to bother me with my big expensive Fujifilm medium format camera in front of Radio City on a Sunday morning. And all of a sudden I hear these footsteps, and it's charging at me, and then it's yelling at me and saying awful things about my camera and stuff. And he wanted to grab my camera. But he saw, I think, that I was all strapped in left, right, and center, and then continued to run across the street, and then dived behind one of the planters there across the street. And I'm going, oh, this is not good. And then I looked and I saw two cop cars over there. And then I just stared at him. I said, I didn't want to show fear. It's like a wild animal. If you show fear, you're in trouble. And I could be a crazy person, but I didn't want him to be too crazy. So I just stared at where he was. And then he saw that he saw me. And then he started going, I'm not scared of you, but I just pointed at the cop cars until he went away. And then I found New York City's finest, and I explained the situation. And I think they knew who he was. And I saw
that guy last time I was there.
Yeah, probably. And I got away safely. So you got to be safe out there in the cities these days, or anywhere really. I've got a same type of situation, not with me, but with a friend. So I have a cheap camera or a less expensive camera that I sometimes use. It's very good. Instead of bringing a really expensive camera that you could be in trouble with. So I try. That's one of the issues I think about.
Very important, yes. I love
Safety
taking
first.
photos. I am humbled by the two of you. Like, woo, someday maybe. I don't know how we're doing on time. Do we have any questions or?
I'm curious on how the two of you found Celebration of Fine Art.
Good question. How did they find Celebration of Fine Art?
I had someone drag me kicking and screaming 2 years ago to this show because they thought my prints were good and I thought they were horrible. And I was so embarrassed. One of the first people that they showed a print to was Robin D'Amore. And I can't believe that Robin gave him the time of day, let alone me. And Robin, I feel, is largely responsible for me getting in here, as well as some of the other photographers that were here this past year, like Light Hunter back there.
I've been here since 2009, doing all the traveling I do. I rarely miss an art museum or an art show. And this was a really unique one when I found out about it. So I came in 2009 and haven't really missed many years of coming here, maybe during COVID. But I like looking at art. I like, if I go out in beautiful places, you like to feel something. I like to do the same thing. I like to look around and see the different styles and see what makes me feel something. So it's a, I don't want to be an advertisement, but it's just a really unique setting. And having been an attendee for many years and now being an exhibitor, I always enjoyed coming as an attendee, but it's even better as an exhibitor. And it has nothing to do with showing my art, but the people that I've met, the level of encouragement. I've been in a lot of different work environments in my life, and I've never had one where 8 hours goes by so quick and you look forward to coming back. Like, it's 7 days a week. And I don't, can we be here 10 hours a day? It's great. Susan's been great, and artists have been encouraging. It's fun hearing their stories, and it's fun, it's not too often you get to go to a place where a stream of people are coming in and you can share your passion with them and they ask questions, and the whole thing is just a cocktail of goodness.
It's our happy place. Yeah, good question. Thank you. Other questions? What have I not asked you that I should have asked?
Better with the answers than I am the questions.
Okay. Great.
I can't think of anything, which is surprising. Yeah.
That is surprising.
Yeah.
Well, we still have some time, and there's more to, if you have other pieces you want to speak to.
Well, I just want to comment on Celebration. I was, what do you call someone that buys stuff here?
Patron?
I was a patron.
Collector.
Thank you. And so I experienced from one side, I was kind of shy at first going into other people's booths at first because I thought I was supposed to buy something. But you don't. You can actually, that's not expected. You can actually form a relationship.
No, you have to buy something from everyone you talk to.
Oh, geez.
No.
Okay. And then being on this other side, thank you, Susan, for allowing that. Where I'm an actual artist, I have to forget the fact that I'm a patron and say I know nothing. And I can't believe how beautiful all these artists have been to me, to support me and to help me and to be my friend. Play chess with and lose and win. And kid with me, I'm with my people. That's all I can say. There's only been a few times in my life in chemical engineering. When I was in school there, I was with my people, and here I'm with my people too. And all of you have been so nice to listen and look at my art. I'm humbled by that, so that anyone would care what I shot. So that's very, very nice too. This is such a special place. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Goodness gracious. Thank you all. We love what we do, and we love all of our patrons and supporters, and we're just so grateful. And it is a privilege to be able to showcase work from people like Ray and Michael and all the artists. And we just want people to be happy when they come through here. So, do we have anybody online with a question? Okay. We have one more back.
Well, not a question, but talking to Michael the other day, I found out that photography. Talking to Michael the other day, I found out that photography is not his only art form. He's an author as well. And I thought maybe since we have some minutes, you could talk about that.
Oh, wow.
He's pretty amazing, actually. Yes, please do.
I did not pay him to ask that.
But you will.
I'm just getting a free copy of the book. I'm in love with the American West. I'm in love with history, and one of the other things I do with my discretionary time is academic research and writing. And had volunteered for a number of institutions within the state and got my hands on working with historic records, and was really blown away by the volume of those records, and really when you stitch them together, what stories can come out of them. And so applying that new skill, I have become fascinated with the development of the territory, particularly in southern Arizona. And there is a building down there that was built in 1881. It's called the Birdcage Theater, and it has been for 140 years been the subject of a lot of commercialized mythology. Having worked with a lot of these records, over a course of 10 years, I have really pursued these records and compiled them, and I found them in a wide range of locations in the state, New York, California. It took me coast to coast. It was a big journey, but it dovetailed really nicely with actually traveling around for photography as well. It's like a Western bonanza that I'm on. And so collecting all these over the years and compiling them, an incredible story started to emerge out of these records. And one of the great findings of that story was that it really elevated the building's value and why it's so significant. I ended up compiling these findings and giving a voice to these records in a book. Typed out a manuscript. I submitted it to the University of North Texas, and they peer-reviewed it and loved it. To my shock, because in my younger years, I wasn't even that hip on reading books. I would have never believed that I would have written one, and it's gone over very well. And if the goal of the book, much like showing these photographs, I tend to be a nonfiction reader, and as is my art form, it is getting in touch with the realities of the West. And the idea behind the book is to give people the opportunity to understand this historic structure, and if they visit it, to appreciate it for what it really is, because it really is a monument that represents a whole segment of worldwide entertainment that doesn't exist anymore. And it is the best preserved example of period entertainment venues that exists on the planet. And as it stands today, it's been kind of identified with a lot of salacious stories and so forth, but I think the building and the people who were instrumental in its operations deserve a little better. So now people have the opportunity.
That's awesome. And it's called?
It's called The Birdcage Theater, The Curtain Rises on Tombstone, Arizona's National Treasure.
Available in your studio. You should have some in the gift shop too.
Yeah, in my studio, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. If you don't like reading, it's on Audible too.
That's awesome.
Thanks.
I mean, the multiple talented people, they sing, they poetry. I know you don't write it, but you read it really well. Write books. Some people got more gifts than others, but I'm glad that we could share them. Yes. Thank you for asking that question. Anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah, what?
Well, if you were to write a book about a location, what would it be? Or a building?
Good question.
If I were to write a book about a location, where would it be? I've written 2 books, but what I would probably write the location would be Golden Valley, early in the morning, at about 5:30 in the morning, crawling out of my crib, walking over to the window and imagining what was beyond. First, imagining what were those lights that I saw in the window. I love early morning lights that pop on, the first lights that you see. Who are these people getting up early? What's beyond that hill? How far can that hill go beyond? And that's probably what I would write about, and then write about my adventures like I was Robinson Crusoe.
And who would illustrate your book?
Oh, you are relentless. No, it might be Martin over there. It might be Tina. It would be someone here at Celebration. Guaranteed, there's so much artistry here. That's amazing.
It would
Or
be-
Bruce, you know,
Yeah. Okay.
or Gregory.
There's many good ones to choose from here, for sure. And is Tina ever going to let anybody see the commission she did?
I thought I liked Tina, but I'm getting upset with her. She's worried that the picture is going to get hurt. Please ask her to see the picture.
So Tina Garrett, who does a lot of beautiful portraits, painted
One of my Manhattan bridges, not that one, but
Yeah.
one of them.
with this moon in it that's extraordinary. Like, and all it almost made her go crazy. She said, because there's a lot of lines and a lot of detail in that. But and again, it's not that exact one, but it's that same bridge. So
It's in her closet. Tell her to take it out of the closet. I want to get out of the closet.
but she's not gonna do another one like that, I'm certain. And I just want to say, Gray gave you permission to touch his photography, but don't think that means that you can touch everybody's work without asking.
Artist.
You touch it, you buy it.
Sometimes I forget when we go in museums because I'm used to being able to touch pieces, and you're not supposed to touch art in a museum anyway. Or don't break it either. Yeah, that's a bad thing. When I was young, I broke something in a gift shop in Colorado, and my parents had to buy it. It was salt and pepper shakers with columbines on it. So I still had one that worked. But it's one way to get what you want. Break it, so your parents have to buy it. So anyway, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you enjoyed the Eye of the Lens and our wonderful speakers. And we are grateful, and we look forward to having you back next week.